What if intelligence is not a number you are stuck with, but a system you can train? Most people grow up believing genius is something you are born with. You either have a powerful mind or you don't, and if you weren't the smartest person in school, then that story is already written. But your brain does not work like that. It changes, it adapts, it rebuilds itself around what you repeatedly do. That is the idea behind neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize through experience, repetition, environment, sleep, stress, and effort. That does not mean every brain hack will raise your IQ overnight. Research is more careful than that. But it does mean the abilities that make people seem highly intelligent, like focus, memory, reasoning, and learning, are more trainable than most people think. And when you look at how great thinkers actually lived, you start seeing the same pattern. They did not just collect information, they trained the conditions that make clear thinking possible. Here's how geniuses train their mind. Habit 1. Protecting time to think with no input. Most people believe intelligence grows by consuming more videos, more books, more podcasts, more noise. But some of your deepest thinking happens when input stops. When your attention is not locked onto the outside world, the brain shifts toward internal thought. That's where reflection, memory, imagination, self-questioning, and future thinking begin working together. Research on the default mode network shows that this kind of internally focused thinking is deeply tied to the mind's internal narrative and can support creative problem solving when it is directed well. This is why so many brilliant people were walkers, not because walking is magical, but because it gave them space to think without interruption. A strong mind is not built only by taking in ideas, it's built by wrestling with them in silence. Smart habit. Take one walk a day with no phone, no music, and no content. At first, it feels empty, then it feels uncomfortable, then your brain starts talking back. Habit 2. Recalling before reviewing. Most people learn in the weakest way possible. They reread, they highlight, they look at the answer, and then they mistake familiarity for intelligence. But memory grows when retrieval is forced. When you close the page and try to bring the idea back on your own, your brain is not just checking what it knows, it's strengthening the pathway to that knowledge. Research on retrieval practice shows that actively recalling information improves long-term learning and can produce better conceptual understanding than passive review. This is one reason highly intelligent people often look slower when they're learning. They don't rush to see the answer. They struggle first. They let the brain work. And that struggle is not weakness. That struggle is construction. Smart habit. Before rereading anything, close it and write down what you remember. Even if it's messy, even if half of it is wrong, the act of pulling knowledge out is part of what makes it stay. Habit 3. Writing to expose unclear thinking. A lot of people write to store information. Sharp minds write to discover what they do not understand. The moment you try to put a thought into words, your brain loses the ability to hide behind vagueness. You notice the gap. You notice the contradiction. You notice what sounded smart in your head but falls apart on paper. That's why notebooks mattered so much to great thinkers. They weren't just recording ideas, they were testing them. And while the research on handwriting versus typing isn't perfectly one-sided, studies and recent reviews suggest that writing by hand can support deeper processing and conceptual understanding in many learning situations because it slows thought down and makes selection necessary. Smart habit. Keep a thinking journal, not a diary, a thinking journal. Write one question a day that you cannot answer clearly, then try to answer it anyway. Your mind becomes sharper when your thoughts are forced into structure. Habit 4. Training attention instead of scattering it. A genius mind is not just a mind full of knowledge, it's a mind that can stay with a problem long enough to understand it. And this is where modern life destroys people. Every notification teaches your brain to leave. Every tab teaches your brain to switch. Every interruption weakens your ability to go deep. Research from Stanford on heavy media multitasking found that heavy multitaskers often perform worse on tasks involving sustained goal-directed attention and filtering out irrelevant information. Even the researchers caution that causation is complicated, but one thing is already clear: constant switching has a cost. Intelligent people are not always the fastest. They are often the ones who stay longer, long enough to connect the dots, long enough to see what everyone else misses. Smart habit. Choose one mentally hard task every day and do it with full attention for 30 to 45 minutes. No switching, no checking, no escape. A distracted brain may feel busy, but a focused brain gets stronger. Habit 5. Using movement to upgrade thinking. A lot of people separate the body from the mind. Smart people do not. They understand that a weak body routine often creates a weak thinking routine. Physical activity doesn't just help health, it helps the brain think, learn, problem solve, and remember better. The CDC also notes that even short bursts of activity can boost memory and thinking skills, and that some brain benefits begin right after a session of moderate to vigorous movement. This is why movement has been a part of serious thinking for centuries. Walks, fresh air, rhythm, circulation, space. Sometimes the answer comes after the body starts moving because the mind is no longer trapped in the same frozen state. Smart habit. If you feel mentally stuck, do not immediately force more screen time. Walk, stretch, move. Often your brain doesn't need more input, it needs better conditions. Habit 6. Taking sleep as seriously as learning. Most people treat sleep like dead time. Geniuses never truly did, because sleep is not the absence of work, it's part of the work. Harvard's sleep research explains that inadequate sleep harms concentration, recall, and memory consolidation. In simple words, when you sleep, the brain helps stabilize and store what you learned, and when sleep is cut short, learning itself becomes weaker. That means a tired brain can study for hours and still keep less. It can read more and understand less. It can work longer and think worse. This is why mental growth is not built on stimulation alone. It's built on effort and recovery, pressure and repair, challenge and rest. Smart habit. Protect sleep like it's part of your training, because it is. Closing. Here's the truth. Geniuses do not become geniuses because they discovered one secret trick. They become extraordinary because they repeatedly train the abilities that intelligence depends on: attention, memory, reflection, clarity, recovery, deep work. That's why IQ should not be treated like a prison sentence. No, you probably can't transform yourself with random hacks and miracle apps, but you can absolutely become mentally sharper than you are right now. And for most people, that change starts the moment they stop chasing shortcuts and start training their mind like it matters. If this changed how you think about intelligence, subscribe for more videos on mental growth, learning, and focus.